Transition of grade 9 students under the competency-based curriculum is bringing lots of challenges, and we ask ourselves whether then we are ready, especially come 2025. And so we get into this very important conversation with education stakeholders that are going to walk us through what the journey has been like, from that moment where we declared officially that, it's a pilot program from the 844 system to competency-based curriculum. And now after the pilot program, officially we say this is where we are headed. Amidst all these challenges, we continue to soldier on. And even as we continue to soldier on, the questions linger, and the questions we'll try to unpack this evening. Allow us to listen to this story that is going to cue us to that very important conversation before I get to introduce my guests.
With only 41 days left before the transition of grade 8 learners to grade 9, concerns are mounting over whether the government is fully preparing to ensure a smooth transition. But even as the clock ticks, the Ministry of Education remains confident in its ability to deliver on its promise.
As at now, across the country, government is putting up 11,000 classrooms funded through the Ministry of Education. We are working with the National Government Constituency Development Fund, who are also doing another 7,000 classrooms.
Kipsang further revealed that 1 billion shillings has been set aside to cater for Nairobi County due to its unique needs. This special funding aims to ensure that grade 9 learners in the capital can continue their education seamlessly without any challenges.
We have a special fund which has been allocated to Nairobi County because of their unique circumstances, which is another 1 billion shillings, so that we can all work together towards making sure that we are ready for our children going to grade 9 in January.
According to Kipsang, the Ministry of Education is doing everything possible, including ensuring sufficient textbooks are available. Masikonde Primary School is among institutions that have already received grade 9 curriculum books.
And as you are all aware, the CS sometimes back launched the distribution of the core textbooks that will be used by our children in the 9 learning areas. We are going to make sure that we avail a book for every learning area, for every learner.
Meanwhile, parents have been urged to prioritize the safety of their children during the holiday season, with a special emphasis on protecting them from early pregnancies and other harmful behaviors. Andreen Kilemi, TV47.
Andreen for that pace setter. In studio with me, 2 gentlemen. This one, I always ask, and I'm sure he gets that question a lot. That is Peter Abunga, Research Officer with KEWOTA. KEWOTA is the Kenya Women Teachers Association. We always want to ask him, Senior, why that and all that. He'll be explaining that shortly as we get to the conversation. We'll be having another gentleman that joins us virtually. That is Albert Aluvisia, who's retired Assistant Director, Adult Education in the Ministry. And last again in studio is James Musila Chege, Director, Waridi Utawala School. You want to tell them why?
KEWOTA, Kenya Women Teachers Association. We call them our sisters. So we are our sisters' keepers.
Yeah.
So KEWOTA is actually Kenya Women Teachers Association, but it also allows male members to join.
All right.
So I'm part of those people from the other gender who say that we are our sister's keeper, and we are part of them.
All right. Asante sana, and thank you so much, gentlemen, for creating time. Is Waridi Utawala set for the transition? Have you gotten to that level where then you have grade 9 students?
Thank you, Linda, for having me. I can confidently say that as Waridi Utawala School, we are very ready for grade 9 in terms of infrastructure, in terms of other materials needed, and even in terms of teachers.
So when we say that as a country we have challenges and we have hiccups, perhaps Peter, to come in, are we saying that these are challenges that are unique to public centers or public schools, contrary to their private counterparts?
Actually, most of those problems that we're talking about and challenges are in the public schools. The private schools, like where my brother is teaching, most of them seem to have already gotten the idea and moved on and invested. Being private, they are able to invest properly and prepare. I can assure you, as a public high school teacher, we are not, what he's saying, we are not ready. The classrooms are not yet ready. Our teachers are not yet trained to know really what's happening. Yes, we have done some trainings here and there. So we are not as prepared as they are. We in the public sector, we're in the public sector.
What brings the difference? This is largely a public sector, program, perhaps a government's program, if you'd want to call it. Maybe at the education sector, I mean, incorporating all, stakeholders. What seems to be the problem? Why is it that then the private counterparts are challenging you to your own game?
It's because our decisions and bureaucracies that guide how we operate are able to make us delay. They cause a lot of delay. Like you've just seen the the PSA,
Yes.
Belio Kipsang saying that they've just released the books to go to the market. You know, by the time that book reaches Turkana, West Pokot, Kakamega, wherever, it is not a short time. For the private people, they are able maybe to have their own ways of, they can fly the books into their schools, they can get ways, they can get courier services to bring in their books. But for us, we have to wait again for the same government to say bring the books, the same government to employ teachers, the same government to do all these things. And that government sometimes is overwhelmed. Now, when it's a privateer doing it or a private enterprise doing it, they're able to do it faster. They're able to go ahead of everybody else. So for us, it's because of the huge number that maybe we are involved. You discover that some of our classes are 90 plus, 120 children in a class. So at our level, I cannot say that we can compete with the private schools.
Come 2025,
yes.
What are we telling our students? If at all we're going to paint a picture of what the situation is like today.
As usual, come ready to firefight. If you're coming to a public school, we don't have enough desks, we don't have enough teachers, we don't have enough books, but we will be there for them. The good thing about us in the public and in government, we manage by crisis. So we shall be there, we shall try our best, but I can assure you, we shall try our best.
Are you contradicting what it is that then, of course, the voices of the government, perhaps now when we're talking about the PSS, the voices of authority are saying, because they are assuring the students that they need not to worry, the parents that they need not to worry, but that come 2025, the 16,000 classrooms and thereabout, and above, are going to be ready and set. Are they?
Yeah, of course. I've always said it, I'll say it on this studio again. Government has to give its people hope.
Okay.
Government, that's their work. That's their work to try and say that we are doing well, to paint a picture. But again, I've always said that Ministry of Education especially, which I work under, many times is a source of fake information, many times, to parents. And I think parents and Kenyans have nowadays known that. There's a lot of fake information that come out of our Ministry of Education. Fake news that, we are ready, we have got the books, we have got the teachers, we have trained the teachers. When you listen to them, you may really think that things are that way. But when you come to the ground, you come to Kayole Primary School, come to wherever we teach them, Shamsinjiri Primary School, I want to assure you, things are different on the ground. They're not what you are seeing there.
You risk being derailed. If at all we're going to say that, 2025 and maybe our students or maybe infrastructure is not ready, we don't have the teachers ready, perhaps we should delay by 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. That automatically will affect you. What would you say about this? And what do you suppose, deters the government from achieving what needs to be achieved, yet the private sector is doing it well?
I think on my side, on behalf of the private sector in education, I would want to challenge the government that now that they gave us the guidelines on what's supposed to be done as the private sector, we have invested in the same, as my fellow panelists have said. Now that we have invested in the same, and not just investing, but heavily, because at some point, like our case, we had even to hire some teachers in advance so that they can acclimatize and get used to the system, so that by the time we are going to grade 9, these teachers are not new to our environment. Yeah. So I would want to challenge the government that they do all what is possible so that they can fast track, so that it will not become an issue that has no equity in such a way that the private schools, they are doing something when our counterparts in the public sector, they are not doing the same. So now that we are like a month to opening of the schools, these classes, there's something the government can do. When it comes to textbooks, I know there was a delay and a lot of delay, that even approval for the books for grade 9 just came out the other day. And I'm very sure that most of the publishers are not yet done with publishing enough books to take care of the need in the country. So I would want to urge the government and challenge them that they take this opportunity to push whatever is possible to ensure that no child, whether in the public sector or in the private sector, loses even a day when we come to term 1, 2025.
Right.
Still on the same note, I'm challenging them more that when it comes to 2025, their delay to facilitate the public schools, because my counterpart has said that at some point they are not in charge of how speedy things can work. Let it not be a situation where if a delay occurs on the other side, we are given another guideline that is likely to make things appear slower in a way like what I can call, quote unquote, waiting for the private, for the public schools to be ready when private schools are ready. Right. So let the government do all what is possible to ensure that come January, all the pupils, all the learners for grade 9 are well facilitated irrespective of the source.
This clearly does not get us by surprise. About 1.2 million students, sat for the primary education or the primary school education assessment that KPSEA in 2022. Yeah. And so all of these are expected to make that transition to JSS and eventually grade 9.
Yes.
When you're talking about delays and we're talking about bureaucracy, do you suppose then that it's by design that we get to encounter these challenges, that it's by design that we find ourselves in this particular situation and perhaps we could have done things different, and how different?
It's not really by design. I don't think that there's somebody seated somewhere just planning for this thing to fail. No. It's the circumstances that we find ourselves in as government and as Kenyans. The CBC curriculum is a very expensive curriculum. Anybody who has ever tried to implement it, whether in the Western world or in the Asian Tigers countries, they have spent and invested a lot of money. We as a country went for this system before we were ready. The piloting system was not done properly. You remember, personally, I was working with a friend of mine called Wilson Zosion, and we complained and we wrote a lot of material saying that we were not ready. And we were told the train had left the station. But the truth of the matter is that the train left the station without the driver. So it was moving at a very high speed, but there was no pilot in that plane. So what we were saying is, slow down, let us catch up. So what we are doing now is that we are trying, it's like we are a man who is led to catch a train, and is running after it to catch up.
What exactly do you mean when you say slow down? Go back to 844?
No.
What is slow down?
Slow down simply means get it right. I've heard some leaders in this country once, in many times, occasions say, it is not hard to get it right in the first place. It is the best thing to do. We always, as a country, get it wrong when we start something. It is a problem not affecting only the education sector. I am a researcher in the education world. It is a problem affecting many sectors. We are having those problems right now when you listen to people talk about the SHA, when you listen to people talk about university funding, model education. Things are done so fast. It's because of the political nature of our country, that we live in a country that is everything is done by politics and not researchers like myself.
Okay.
Our work is put on the shelf somewhere. We may advise, we may give the advice to the country, to everybody who is interested, and tell them, slow down, let us get it right. Let's get the programs, let's get the books, let's get the designs. You see, it's like building a house. If I want to construct this house that we are in, I first must sit down and draw a plan of how I'm going to build it. In fact, there are some things they call a BQ. You have to come up even with the finances of the building that you are going to build. Then you start thinking about where you will get the money. We as a country, we move into something and start doing it even before. We do the foundations, we do the budgeting properly, we do the BQ, we do everything that is supposed to be done. And that's what we are saying, slow down. Let's get things right first. Get the teachers ready. Get the funding. Let's get the money. Let's build the classrooms. Let's put the designs in place. Let's put the teachers who are supposed to teach. And let's get the supervisors, the quality assessment people to check if what we are teaching is actually quality. So we didn't do it, and I'm very sorry to say it. We didn't do it. But because our country has got 5 years of political work that must be done within those 5 years. And a leader in our country normally has a legacy to leave behind. So we have to work within that space of 5 years. And to my work as a researcher, it is detrimental. It is catastrophic. It is hurting out many generations. It is going to subdue many dreams, and it's not good for us.
And we'll come back to you for the findings, because then we need to understand what are some of these proposals, what are some of these findings that were established that have been shelved and are not being put to consideration. But then we come back to you. You make it sound like it's pretty much an easy transition. Have you faced any form of challenges, say from the beginning of implementing competency-based curriculum up until now?
CBC is a very good curriculum. Very good style of doing things. Challenges have been there along the way. But most of them, when you foresee them in advance, you are able to prepare on what do I need for this. Because like when the Presidential Working Party talked about having grade 7, 8, and 9 domiciled in primary schools, right from that time when that report was out, as a school we started preparing having an extra class or extra classes for grade 9. And therefore, that early preparation is the one which gave us an added advantage because we prepared early in advance.
All right.
However, it has not always been smooth. And this smoothness is being interfered with when it comes to issues that we have to wait for the government or the ministry or any other organization outside our control to give the guidelines.
Right.
It is smooth, yes. But when it comes to a point where we have to wait for the guidelines, then we have to hold back at some point. Like now, the approval of the books for grade 9 took quite a time. By the time our learners were breaking for the November, December 2024 holidays, the books had not yet gone through full approval. And therefore, we had to wait after they have been approved. We now follow up with our parents. We communicate to them that these are the right books which have been approved by the government for use in grade 9. So it has been a smooth transition for us. However, challenges cannot lack. Challenges cannot miss, especially when the control is out of our control, quote unquote.
Okay.
Yes.
What has gone into the training of the teachers? Because that also is a big problem.
Okay, the training of the teachers, the biggest problem that we have is that some of the teachers we have in the field were trained in the 844 system. Because it's just the other day that the teacher training colleges and the universities have adapted the CBC model of training teachers. And I think the oldest teacher who has gone through the CBC training is maybe 2-3 years from college. And therefore it means now when they come to the field, that's why I said earlier that we had to hire our teachers earlier. So that now if they are 844 trained, we now bring them to other trainings, workshops, and seminars all through the third term and these holidays to ensure that now we get the 844 in them and we tune them it so that it can look like the CBC that we have. Yes, I agree that some of the things, quite a percentage in 844 and CBC is the same. But there's some slight difference when it comes to the pedagogy or the teaching methods. So that's why we have them early in advance so that we can ensure that they get the right way of doing things.
I will ask this as a typical Kenyan.
Yes.
Is the training not standardized? Is it not what plays out at the public level that plays out at the private level? If we're talking about training of teachers, is there a certain, module, I would say, perhaps that, is required for training that would cut across?
Right. There is the training, the workshop seminars and retooling that is done at the sub-county level. But now sometimes you look at how many teachers per sub-county will attend. For instance, if you take your teachers there in a sub-county, and they are teachers of mathematics, for example.
Yeah.
And the number of teachers present in that workshop, 800, take that as a number. And the facilitator is 1 per time. So the achievement that facilitator will achieve with like 800 teachers may not what we desire as a private school. That is why sometimes he has said that CBC is a very expensive system, and I concur with him. So sometimes we are forced to go out of our way to get those trainers, same ones, maybe from KICD, from the ministry, from NEC, so that now we can bring the training nearer to our teachers, so that even if it is 2-3 schools who are neighboring each other, we come together, we share the cost, so that we can have our teachers trained one by one so that they can have that one-on-one engagement with that trainer and facilitator so that we don't get it wrong. However, I don't know what will happen in public schools, so the government has to do something, especially with the training, because the same challenge we have with the teachers originating from 844 training is the same that they have. But now the retooling thing and being acclimatized and being brought to the speed with the CBC is quite a challenge.
Okay.
To our case, it's an extra challenge, extra expenditure that we have to go through.
Oh, interesting. And we come back to the findings, which are very important. I know we might not be able to pick everything, but my assumption would be that the Presidential Working Party, presented their findings and their submissions guided by research.
Yeah.
And I think this was well articulated. And they took some quality time to present these findings, or perhaps to present these proposals that they presented to the president. I don't know whether they have been as useful so far. Yeah. But what are some of these notable findings, that will be life-changing, game-changing on this transition that you feel have been shelved and would have otherwise helped us?
Thank you very much. Yes, the Presidential Working Party, what now we are using right now, is less than 2 years old, because what we are talking about, CBC, started around 8-9 years ago. So with the ECD, went into primary school, then we came to what we call grade 3, then we came to grade 6, and then when President Ruto took over as president, he decided to form a committee that will advise him on way forward. That's what we're calling the Presidential Working Committee or Task Force. Now, it came up with some recommendations, but the recommendations were not the first. We had done a lot of recommendations. By the way, in the Presidential Working Party, we as Kewater had one of us sitting in that committee, and we gave our findings to her to present. But again, she also found other people who had come there also with their findings, So the problem is that when you bring so many experts to sit together, give them a short time, tell them to come up with something, they will come up with something, yes, but it will have a lot of contradictions. And I can tell you, we in our findings, when we started, the first minister at the time when a CBC was being proposed was known as Madam Amina Mohammed. She was the first minister, the Minister for Education at the time. And the person who was actually chairing our task force that time, and we met at KICD to come up with our findings on what was needed before we continue with the CBC, was the university don at Daystar by the name Professor, his name is just disappearing. So when Professor came up and presented his report, which we had given him, the Minister for Education, that was Madam, Amina Mohammed.
Amina Mohammed then.
Yes, Amina Mohammed. Amina Mohammed immediately said, then we cannot continue. We are not ready. We cannot continue with this CBC. We have to prepare. We need time. Actually, on the steps of KICD, anybody listening to us can Google it. She said, we can't continue with CBC because we are not ready. These are the things that we gave her that was needed before we set up. Number one, what is calling retooling of teachers. Retooling of a teacher, you can't do it in a seminar, as he says, in a 3-hour or 5-hour or 2-day workshop. CBC pedagogy is the teaching system, the way you teach. It's different from the lecture method that we went through when we went to college or the university, or what we were learning under 844. Lecture method is like a preacher standing in front of you and telling you things, and the work is just to say amen or whatever word you can use. Or
I want you to hold it at that point. I want you to hold it at that point, because then that's getting interesting, and we really do not want to miss out on something. Allow us to take a quick short break. I am curious because I have had sittings with persons that were also here when we were transitioning to 844, and they tell you that equally it wasn't an easy thing. So until when do we get ready for any form of transition? Allow us to take a short break on this very note, and the lines are open for you to speak to us. I'll be looking at some of the comments that you send us as we continue. After this break, we have some more.
Vile unavyojua watoto wengi sana hawana namna. Mimi ningependelea watoto wasome.
I'm here to stress on education. At the same time, let us actually do any kind of sport that we are doing. Sport speaks the best language to everybody.
Tunataka tutafute talents. Zile raw talents kutoka kule nyumbani mashinani mahali tuko leo.
Hizi mbio za Chepsaita, like all other sports, zinaleta watu pamoja.
We want to use this event to uplift the lives of the community.
Anafurahia hii mchezo sana. Hata sikaange naambianga watu tuende Chepsaita.
Wanafunzi wakimbie ili wakuze talanta ya mbio ama kuhimiza tena elimu.
This is the place to be. Hapa ndipo mahali wanastahili kuwa tarehe 7. Wale watoto walikimbia last year, wamekimbia mpaka wamefuka mipaka zetu za Kenya.
Hey there friends, welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips. And the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm.
For to the competency-based curriculum CBC, but today we narrow it down to the grade 9 students transition, and we just ask ourselves, what are some of the notable challenges and how do we get to address them? What are the proposals on the table? We're talking about the concerns on infrastructure, the concerns on teacher shortage, the concerns on just how well prepared to give our students proper learning material, as well as just giving them that psychological support, and that is very crucial. And I mean, the biggest concern again would be on the question of funding. We open the lines for you to speak to us. The numbers running down on your screen, 22047 being the SMS short code, as well as the hashtag the People's Court and at Linda_Alela TV47KE, even as we get to unpack what it is that you say, as well as we get to hear what the guests are saying. We are expecting to get a hold of Albert Aluvisia, that is who will be joining us virtually. But until then, we have James Musile Steele as well as Peter Munga. And Peter, we were talking about the research findings and the proposals that were presented by the Presidential Working Party. And you were just trying to unpack, the procedures thereafter, that this is what we have presented. But now when it comes to the question of implementation, how do we get our teachers integrated and so much more?
So in curriculum design or making of curriculum, there are 3 main areas that bring out a very good curriculum. First of all is the environment that we are going to operate from. We as a country, we need to look at the environment of our school. Environment means where are our schools found? Mm-hmm. For example, a school found, say, in Taita Taveta or along the Tana may not be the same as a school found in Nyeri. Mm-hmm. Maybe in terms of the climate, maybe in terms of the socialization of the people there, maybe in terms of the religion. So we can't tailor and package one thing and say, this is what all of you, and push it down their throats. Yeah, all of you must chew this and chew it well. That means you're not bringing about what we call equity in education. So as researchers, the first thing we try to do is to find out, this new curriculum that we want to put on our people, are our people, all of them, at the same level to receive it? So that we talk about equity in education. Because if they are not at equal levels, then you are not passing education. You are being unfair. You know, in human rights, we talk about the rights of a child to education. So if you are not serving the same measure to the child in the private school, and to the child in Lokichogio, and to the child along the border of Kenya and Somali, and a child in Nairobi slums, then you are not doing service. So as a country, first needed to have brought our people to some kind of level, equilibrium. So from that equilibrium, now we serve them this new curriculum. Now, we were not yet there. Our schools are in various stages of development. You cannot even talk about, some even don't have sanitation. You see, even when sanitation is bad, you cannot talk about good education. Some don't have food. We need to think about food in those schools. Some schools in this country receive food. Is the food reaching those schools in all those kind of places? So we didn't reach that level. Then the next thing we talk about is the tools that you use to teach. As a teacher, you don't just go there and stand there and present, especially with CBC. CBC is like, what can I say? It's like setting up a drama stage. You don't just go there and teach and sing and go out. You must set up tools and set up things that these children are going to use for them to be able to learn. So the problem that we have been having, we had as a country, is that the tools that are supposed to be used, when we were in drama, we used to call them the props that the child must interact with to learn, are actually absent. We are talking about music in schools. How many schools even have seen a guitar, leave alone a piano? His school may have such an instrument. My school cannot even fathom, what that is all about. Then we're talking about things like the playing grounds. We are teaching our children in the syllabus. We are having things like sports like a basketball, kabaddi, what is it called, kabaddi, and some other games that I normally see on TV. Now, me as a teacher, I've not interacted even, I've never seen such a game. But the ministry and CBC expects me not only to teach, but also to train the child to know how to play that game. So what I'm saying is that we as researchers advise the government that we are not yet ready with the tools, we are not yet ready with the environment, we are not yet ready with the teachers.
But what is this discrepancy that we witness with the public and the private sector? Because if the private sector is going to say, okay, well and good, we have been pressured to the corner and we have no choice but to proceed. They're pretty much saying that this is possible. So why this hard stance on proceeding?
They are enjoying it because of two things. They're having fun with this system for two things. For them, they're able to make money out of it. It's a money making.
Is it a money minting affair? He's seated here.
Let me inform you. They're able to tell parents, cater for this. We are going for a swimming trip. It's 500. We are going to photocopy papers. Buy your child a phone or a tablet. It's money. And they're able to convince the parents. The people they talk to or they deal with, some of them are people who can afford. We are dealing with people who may not be able to afford those kind of things. So they are enjoying, they're having fun. And in fact, for them, my friend, in our research, we said, this CBC system will favor the private schools and profit making in education.
It's very expensive?
It's expensive.
Hold it there, let him get in. And James, it's a money minting affair, you think?
No, it's not. Because when you look at the cumulative guideline of what the parents were paying in 844, because I was also there in the same capacity, and what they are paying now, the parents are paying more. Because
now?
Yes.
Okay.
Because as much as it's a different system, the requirements and the needs are more. Because if we have a lab that is required to be there for grade 7, 8, and 9 for the integrated science, in 844 it was not there. So the only way this lab can be there, yes, the school will have the initial setup. But now the chemicals and the procedural uses of these things that will be there each and every term, there must come up a charge, a cost attached to that. And a school might decide to call it lab fee or whichever fee. Okay. Then a certain figure is attached there. So that now comes with the idea or the issue that CBC, we can't run away from that. It's an expensive system as compared to 844, whether the financier is the government or whether the financier is the parent. Okay. So eventually, if you look at it in a roundwise, even the parents in the CBC now in the private sector, some of them at some point, they are almost losing it. Because for you to do exactly what the guidelines are saying, this expenditure must be attached. In between, there are even some assessments you might find that you are told to invite the parents. For example, the grade 3s, they were to do a certain project in the integrated learning area. And one of the ways of assessing was possibly to invite the parents so that the learners can showcase what they have achieved. So as a result, for you to have the parents in school, there must be an expenditure, however small, even if it's a bottle of water. So CBC becomes a bit expensive, but not money minting. Because even if you go to the balances of everything, possibly 844 was giving more than the CBC, because the expenditure then was not as much as it is today.
Okay.
Yes.
Did we miss on the golden opportunity to perhaps take time and ponder on this some more before we proceed to implement? Because then we're looking at two different governments. Yes. And, you know, it's in the business of every government to succeed. Yes. Why would this government take it up and proceed with it, knowing very well that perhaps there's some hiccups that would drag them behind?
Yes, I will answer that one. And I've said it before on this show, some of the shows I've had on this station. The reason that question is very paramount. Why would you want to go ahead with this? You know, even when you listen to when Kenya Kwanza was campaigning to take over, they said we shall review CBC, we may even do away with it. We may, you know, if you listen to those statements, you go back and hear. But when they came into government, everybody thought there'll be a lot of changes. But they came up and said, we'll continue with it. We'll bite the bullet. This is the reason. The funding of education in this country is not just done by this country. We have interested parties. We have the World Bank. We have so many funders from donors. Our education system is geared towards some direction. When you are able to educate people in a certain direction, you are able to control them. The people who fund us as a country, when you are campaigning out there, you may campaign without knowing what is inside the kitchen. When you get in the kitchen, you are told, you see, when we were telling you about this system of education, we have the people who are funding it. The people are giving us the money to carry out those programs. So those people must also have a say in what we teach, what we do, and how we should run our systems. If you do your research properly, this system called CBC has a lot of funding from not within us, but from without us. And those are the people who command and direct exactly what we should be doing. So this system, the CBC system, is not just ours. It is not us who made it.
This funding has been in existence even with the 844. Donor funding has been in existence even with the 844.
Yes.
So as you respond to that, we also have heard stakeholders in the education sector analyze the competency-based curriculum and saying that perhaps this is the best kind of system for our students.
Yes.
So even when we complain about the element of funding and perhaps some individuals who are going to benefit, would you not agree that perhaps this is the best thing
this system called CBC is the best for our country at the moment. One of the best. But the only problem is we can't afford it. We have to go out to seek a donor and a funder to fund it. So when we were having other you have put it very well, that even the other times we were having poor funding. Mostly maybe they were funding the things to do with feeding programs, they were funding things to do with building. And the same donors who are funding us then are still funding us today.
Is it then
just that right now,
to say that we have funders who have interest and they are committed to funding, but at the same time we say we do not have enough money to implement?
Yes, if we had our money, we'll tailor-make our own system of education. We will teach our children properly to survive in the savannah, in the African nature, to deal with agriculture. Why would agriculture as a lesson have 3 lessons in a week, and English class has 12 lessons in a week? Compulsory.
Language of
why is it
instruction.
that? Why would it be that English will have more than even agriculture, which is the backbone of our economy? It's because somebody wants us to learn something. Somebody is directing us in a certain direction. Now that is something that you have to really decolonize and really think about it very seriously to know that there's somebody pulling the strings on our education system. He funds it, he makes sure that we follows it up, and we do what exactly they want. So the problem again is that they pay for it. Yes, in terms of a loan, yes, but they pay for it. They give us the money. That is where the problem comes. But it's a good system. I've not said it's bad. It's a good system, well thought out, especially to help us, but we can't implement it. Let me tell you now, a child in Nairobi primary school right now cannot be enjoying the same kind of education system with a child in Lokichogio. You may look at it from whichever angle. And education is not just about going to class and throwing words. It's about equity. It's about making these people equal. Somebody used to say that education makes us equal. How will education make you equal if you're not accessing the tools? Everybody's not accessing the tools that are needed for that education. So that is the only thing that makes CBC complicated. A good system, but those challenges now make it not able to fit us again.
All right. Before we get to progressively address, what would be the action plans and all that, the psychological way down that comes with this, for you who are owners of institutions or of schools, for you who are teachers in schools, for you who have to literally explain to parents that you must make more payments, contrary to the usual ones that they're used to, for the students themselves. I mean, just how bad is it, and what are we doing to address the same?
Okay, when you compare these two systems, I would say even as a school manager, as a school director, it was easier to be a director in the 844 than in the CBC, in this manner of sense. The way CBC has many requirements, many updates, is the same way you have to go back to the parent in whichever way to update them on the same things. And not all these things that they take like it is the ministry, KICD, NEC, which has come up with them. They even at some point they brand it is you, the school, who want it to be done like that. And therefore you realize that most of the parents at each and every point in time, they are living in a kind of uncertainty and some fear. We don't know what next. Like each and every time they're asking you, are you sure grade 9 will still be here when they're in your compound? Because they knew there was a time that a certain class was to be elsewhere, but they were told it is supposed to be here. So I'll say that there is some psychological instability because you don't know what next. You don't know what the next secular will say. Because each and every time something is being said, the other time we were told that grade 7, 8, and 9 will go to the existing secondary schools. After some time, another double speak came and said they'll be domiciled within the existing primary school. Within not a long wait, we were told that these are the learning areas or the subjects. After a short time,
they were changed.
Something equivalent to a memo was released that this subject is to be merged with this one and be called that way.
Okay.
So as a result, like now, I know publishers and booksellers are crying a great deal because PP1, PP2, grade 1, 2, 3, 4, then grade 9. Leave grade 9, that's a new system. It's a new class, it's a new grade. It's the first time it is there. But from PP1 to grade 4, almost all the books were changed. And therefore, there are people who are crying that they have a stock of millions in their book shops, but they can't sell to anyone because everything has changed. So each and every stakeholder in this education sector now is living in some kind of uncertainty because we don't know exactly what will happen tomorrow. We might be having agriculture, the one he has mentioned, only to realize that agriculture has been mixed with another subject to be called another thing, so that publisher has lost that business. Right. So I would say that there is a lot of psychological instability in almost all the stakeholders.
Peter, in your research, I mean, just how participatory is it and involving at the same time? And when we're talking about the psychological way down or instability, I mean, what are your findings and how can this be addressed, if at all we have not addressed them? Yes, the psychological instability has been part of actually our cry as researchers because, as he puts it, when as a ministry, you keep changing the subjects, you merge some, you change the domiciling, as he says, some things what to be done in high school. But now when a new president comes and he has a new advisor, they put it now in primary school. All that kind of confusion has a lot of instability on the learner and on the teachers. For example, like now, what we talk about, what is talk about grade 9, I was going through some of the books in grade 9. And when I looked at the mathematics, what they're supposed to be teaching, there are things, personally, I did, I'm a high school teacher. There are things that I taught at Form 3 and Form 4, you know. They're advanced. We're talking about matrices, we're talking about some of those fractions. The mathematics, the algebra that they are going to do, it's not just any algebra. This is now high school material. But you see, it's been put in a school that is domiciled in a primary school. The teachers that we're talking about here, a school like, I'm talking about public school, for example, the teachers are being sent maybe 2 teachers to teach the whole of that area or whatever. They're not specialized. Like in high school, I was specialized. I was told you'll teach math, physics. So that was my area. But now, here is a teacher who trained maybe in biology or only trained in English, but now has to teach all those areas, including math and all that. Now, that is psychological. That's instability is what we wanted addressed. We, in our findings, we had told the government, this what we call junior secondary should be domiciled in secondary schools. Because we knew... As opposed to primary. Yes, as opposed to primary. Because we knew we'll find the labs there. And when the late Minister for Education, Magoha, when he saw Magoha running around and doing all those things he was doing, he was a researcher like myself. He knew what was needed. He did all that so that he can be able to prepare those schools to receive these children when they come over. Unfortunately for him, the system changed. He even passed away. And now the new people who came in with a new style. But there's been Belio Kipsang. No, Belio's not even that time the minister. And Belio is not a researcher. He's a political appointee. He has to speak the language, the lingo. So when we researchers come in, he has to go with the lingo of the time. Whoever appointed him, whoever pays the piper, gets the tune or whatever they say. So he cannot be part of us in that manner. So what we can only say here is this. We as researchers have been largely ignored. You cannot talk about anybody who has researched who is being listened to. We have had seminars, we have called government to places. We wrote, when I was working at NAT headquarters with Winsor Sosion, we did a full-fledged research on what was supposed to be done and give out to government, and we called government and handed them the report. And it, of course, went to the shelf. So most of our research and findings as researchers have ended up on the shelves. We cross fingers. So what we normally do is we allow them to move. When they get stuck a bit, they come back to us and say, okay, what do you people want now? What can we do here? We are stuck here. Then we tell them, merge agriculture and sports, make them one class. Then they say, oh, yeah, let's try that. And I love that bit. and I mean, perhaps it's a good way to wind it up when we say that in the event that they wake up and say, oh, well, maybe there were some findings that would be helpful. Why? Yes. I mean, how about we go back to them? Yeah. If they're going to do that and, we look at the system itself that we have already gotten ourselves into, if it were to work and work right for that matter, what would that mean in terms of upgrading the state of education and the standards of education in the country?
If CBC works, and we pray it works, because the only problem that is there, and he has highlighted it, is that how I wish there could be a time where we separate and make education a policy matter and not a political matter. Because most of the time when we have a political appointee or a different leader taking charge, we are prepared for a certain change. However, if CBC comes into play and succeeds through thick and thin, I think that this is the best system that we can ever have.
Okay.
Because if you look at these developed worlds, countries that you can say, these are countries that I would wish Kenya becomes like one day. They have a system, if not CBC, similar to CBC. Because you see now in CBC, every learner has an opportunity to be identified. Because here it's a matter of competence. What are you able to do? And that's why even a bigger threat comes when you go to grade 10, 11, and 12. Because now that's where we are going to get now the pathways, where those who are for science, for engineering and mathematics will take their way. But now when it comes to that point, I don't know. If now we cannot afford to have a simple lab in a grade 7, 8, and 9, I don't know what will happen in that STEM school where everything is lab-like.
Wow,
for
interesting.
Example.
Specialization, which has worked rather too well for other countries. As we come to a close, the same question. If this were to work, if we were to get the competency-based curriculum right, what would it mean in terms of just changing or bringing us that shift in the education sector?
It will mean a lot, but it won't work. Yeah, I have to say the truth, it won't work.
But what are you telling our students?
Yeah, they have to listen to this. You know, we have said it as researchers many times. Our children are being used at this moment as guinea pigs, as experimental rats. You know, we are experimenting with them. That's why changes of policy keep coming every time, now and then. What will happen? 844 was almost similar to what we are talking about. 844, those who can remember and listening to us, people are taught how to build, to construct, even mechanics, you know, things were done, woodwork, we had metalwork, we had woodwork in 844. We had electricity as a subject in 844. What happened? As they go along, they get fatigued. So they will struggle with this animal called CBC. I can assure you, and I'll repeat it here when we come, and we meet some time from now. We will struggle with this animal, but the truth of the matter is that as we go along, and I've listened to so many of my colleagues, especially in public schools, say, we are just going back to 844. Whatever we are doing is just 844. We are still lecturing method, the 844 system. We are still doing things the way, even setting exams. We were told we will not be setting exams. We are going back to setting exams. They did a CAPSEA. CAPSEA is an exam. When we started CBC, and he'll tell you, we were told there'll be no exams. This one will have no exams. So we are going back. And that is the problem when you don't get it right in the beginning. You make 10 steps forward, you make 100 steps backwards. And that is the bottom line of what I can say today.
Well. We continue having this conversation. I mean, until, of course, we get it right, we can only hope against all hopes that indeed, as a country, we manage it well. James Musila Chege, Director, Waridi Utawala School, not the last speaker. The last speaker was Peter Amunga, Research Officer at Kewater. And of course, gentlemen, asanteni sana. Unfortunately, we could not get a hold of Albert Aluvis here, but we appreciate that he had committed to be part and parcel of us. We must close it at this very point, but as we say, the conversation continues, and we're looking forward to see just how we're going to do this magic and ensure that our students come 2025 are admitted at the level that they're supposed to be admitted in. My name is Linda Alela. Massive feedback from your end, but then time would not allow us to go through that. We look forward to see you again next Tuesday. Do have yourself a lovely, lovely night. See you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.